Tonight's community conversation is a part of a bigger initiative called Tennis Together South Carolina. USTA South Carolina launched this right after USTA's national statement on solidarity with the Black community. So joining me tonight as co-moderator is Linda Page. She's already spoken, but she's our volunteer chairperson of our DE&I committee. And we also have Kara Anderson. She's our coordinator of marketing and communications. She's doing a lot of the technical moderating behind the scenes, and we appreciate that a lot because I'm not a techie. So our role tonight as moderators will be to keep the meeting, focus on its purpose and provide an opportunity for all voices to be heard in a safe and respectful environment. We want to make sure that we manage our time so that we can get finished up by 8 o'clock, like we plan to. And as we continue to admit folks in, thank you for coming. We'd like to introduce to you the president of our board, Mr. James McKissick. If you could wave both hands like you're saying SOS. There he is. Thank you for joining us. And we have our executive director, Ms. Jennifer Gregg, who's also on the call tonight. Thank you to our wonderful leaders, as well as everyone else who's joined us tonight. Turn it over to Linda.
Thank you, Pamela. I am so excited to see how many 60+ people in this call. When we envisioned the idea of this community conversation, we had no idea that there would be so much interest in this complex and difficult topic of racial inequities in tennis. So thanks to all of you again for joining us. I'd like to very quickly go through the purpose of the meeting for tonight. As Pamela mentioned, I'm Linda Page, and again, very excited to be one of the moderators. We plan tonight's community conversation in response to the social unrest in the country. With that said, the purpose of tonight's conversation is to engage the community in truly meaningful conversation so that we can understand how racism and injustice shows up in tennis. Our goal is to have an open dialogue about our tennis community, to understand how issues of inequity might show up, and ultimately identify the barriers to growing tennis in African American communities. And while our focus tonight is on African American communities, as you know, we embrace everyone, but thought we'd put a specific emphasis on that group because of some of the numbers that you'll hear about shortly. We're hoping that this dialogue tonight will be inspirational and cause each of us to want to take actions as individuals and with others to find a renewed way forward in USTA's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Pamela?
Okay, in order to have a successful meeting, we have to have some ground rules. We want to make sure that we have an open and safe space to talk, respect each other's viewpoints, use I statements, try not to interrupt, please don't do it. Limit your exchanges to 1 minute when you're speaking live. This is not political. This is not a political discussion, put it that way. So don't make it one. Use your Q&A questions and chat for comments as much as you'd like. Keep your phones muted. Raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll make sure we try to call on you, okay?
We didn't believe we could have a meeting without going through some of the key definitions in diversity to make sure that we all have a common understanding of what they mean. Pamela, is there a question, comment?
No, I was trying to make sure that I admitted everyone. Sorry.
No problem. So we've listed a few key terms to make sure that we're all level set on what they mean. And I'm going to go through these very quickly. And again, Pam mentioned use chat and Q&A liberally. Let me encourage you to do that. By now, I'm pretty sure that we're all very familiar with Zoom. And if you're not, now might be the time to go grab the youngest person in your household. I'm sure they could help you. So feel free to use that. We will be monitoring it throughout the night. Diversity, let's start there. This is our collective differences and similarities across many spectrums, including race, gender, religion, geography, income level, health. There are so many. Each person in this meeting brings a set of diverse qualities to this call. And that's what's going to make this conversation tonight rich, because with our unique, diverse experiences, we're looking to you to bring those to the table as we engage in this conversation. Equity. Equity acknowledges that there are uneven starting places and attempts to take meaningful action to change policies, practices, or assumptions that prevent underrepresented groups from being fully engaged and supported. We're here tonight because we want equity. We want to figure out how to tear down those barriers. Inclusion. Inclusion is active, intentional, ongoing efforts to promote full participation and to provide a sense of belonging into the decision-making processes, into activities, and even in positions of power. Ally. Hopefully, we all join this call because of a personal interest in taking action to support people outside of your natural group. In the context of diversity, an ally is an advocate for people from marginalized communities. Next slide, Kara. Here, I want to cover 3 of the topics. I would like to cover implicit bias, institutional racism, and privilege. So please take a look at the other 2 that I won't go into specifically. And I'm spending time on these because I think these 3 are very interesting. Implicit and unconscious bias. We all have implicit biases. It's how we make sense of the world very quickly. These biases are the attitudes or stereotypes that help us understand, make decisions, and take actions. They're not all bad. These biases happen on a subconscious or unconscious level. Let me give a couple of examples. Resumes with ethnic sounding names pushed down in the selection process for interviews. Your unconscious state of mind says that minorities are less qualified. Second example, women are more frequently interrupted in business meetings when they're talking. The assumption being that men have more important things to say. You've heard the expression woke. Woke is about being conscious about racial oppression and injustice. Are you awake to your unconscious biases? Institutional racism. Institutional racism refers to practices, policies that create different outcomes for different racial groups. In tennis, acts of segregation intentionally kept Black people out of our sport. The legacy of those decisions exists within our sport today. That's why we're here. Since racism is a part of the very cultural fabric in which we live in the US, institutional racism often goes unnoticed, ignored, and oftentimes denied. However, being awake today means that we've likely heard about examples of systemic racism in our housing policies dating back to the 1930s. In education, healthcare, banking, sports. Examples. If you live in the US and you've never been around anyone that's different from you, it may be the result of structurally racist housing policies. Another example. We often enter buildings where there are pictures of presidents, board members, award winners are hung, and they don't depict the demography that matches that of our state, city, country, you name it. That means that that organization might have an issue with institutional racism. Leslie Allen, hopefully everyone had a chance to do the homework. Leslie Allen talked about USLTA's pattern of scheduling the people of color to play each other in the first round. That's another example. Clearly not wanting people of color in the sport. That is what institutional racism is. Privilege. Privilege refers to an unearned social power that is granted because of the color of your skin. It shows up in multiple ways. When I was doing reading to prepare for this, I ran across a statement that someone used to describe privilege, and they said it's an invisible, weightless knapsack of special provisions, maps, passports, code books, visas, clothes, tools, and blank checks. This was also illustrated in the homework assignment, and I pulled a quote from that. And the quote was, "When the color barrier was finally broken by Alice Marble showing, ostensibly, the quickest way to make change for Black people was to have white people use their privilege to step up." Powerful then and still true today. Here are a few examples of privilege. If you can go shopping alone most of the time, assured that no one's going to follow or harass you, that's privilege. If you don't have to educate your child, if you don't have to have the talk so that they're aware of systemic racism for their own daily physical protection, that's privilege. If you go home at the end of a workday feeling validated and tied in rather than isolated, out of place, outnumbered, unheard, held at a distance, and sometimes feared, that's privilege. Pamela.
Okay. Now we're going to have a little bit of participant introductions. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics tonight, but first I'd like to learn a little bit about who's on the call. So please, in the chat, share something that's a fun fact about you. Go. Put it in the chat. Something fun about you.
Pamela, I don't know where Chad is.
Okay. If you hover at the bottom, there's a little box that looks like a funny, let's see, like a funny paper box. You can click on that and you can type right in there. You see
Nope,
it?
it's not. No. Sorry. I used to be a golf pro. So how's that?
I like that.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Somebody is a cat mom. Jen Smith has 6 pets. Rex, you're still a good dancer.
Katrina loves to crochet.
Oh yeah, any magicians? Anybody join the circus?
No, but Emily has horses and 2 donkeys.
Wow. Jim Gooden is a professional actor and a voiceover artist. You should have done this chat for me. Great.
Jen
Something really neat about me. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that Jen Smith out of Greenville has 6 pets. That's a lot, Jen.
Yeah, that's a lot. Carol was a poll worker this year.
They're all rescues, by the way.
Oh, very nice.
Oh, good.
Very
Okay,
nice.
good.
Any musicians or anything? Anybody play any instruments? Okay. Well, something really neat about me is I'm a self-proclaimed gardener, and I have 4 pineapple plants right in my backyard.
That's pretty exciting. And something about me, I traveled to Rwanda, Africa, a few years ago with my daughter. We did a service project at a girls' school, and it was an experience that it was incredible, very humbling.
Awesome. And Bob Piper used to be a stamp collector. Now he uses those to send out Christmas cards. So that's pretty neat.
Nan Smith is an actress. She played Miss Hannigan in Annie in the community theater. That's pretty exciting, Nan.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing all that really neat stuff. We have another poll question. What is your primary role that you play in tennis? Now, this is something that you do that makes an impact. So you could have a whole lot of things, but the thing that you do that impacts others. Check 1. And Kara has it right on the screen. Okay. All right, we're gonna wrap that up in about 10 seconds. Right. Okay, end the polling and look at the results. We have a pretty balanced group of individuals, players, volunteers, coaches, teaching pros, folks on the board, staff members, and officials. So thank you so much for sharing. So it looks like we'll have a good representation tonight, and we're going to have some great discussion time. So Kara's going to get the next video prepared for us to watch, and we're going to be discussing barriers after watching this video.
Kara, can you make it large? Sound's not coming through, Kara. Oh, there you go. Just bear with us. We're getting to the point where it begins. Right here.
Race is still the leading indicator about whether or not one succeeds. And systemic racism is really just naming the complex interaction of culture, policy, and institutions that hold in place the outcomes we see in our society based on race.
We stand today for the black people.
There is also institutional bias, and there's systemic bias, which is just acknowledging our history, our culture, all of our policy and practice, and the ways in which those things determine the success for people in our country based on race. Whether we're thinking about employment, whether we're thinking about access to education, whether we're thinking about access to public health, what are the questions we should be asking that guarantee that access for everyone, especially based on their needs? that would allow us all to see the kind of successful, thriving communities that I think we're all yearning for. Even as we're talking about in this moment the horrors of the murder of George Floyd, the reality is that over 20,000 Black people have died at more than twice the rate of white folks as a result of COVID. And that is about the history of those systemic failings. It's really about placing white people in an advantaged position, continued investment, continued advantage that actually plays out in the outcomes in our community. Deeply believe we are in a moment where we have the opportunity to sort of turn the corner on our history and really live into the just multiracial democratic society that I think we all yearn to be.
Kara, thank you for that. As Pamela mentioned, one of the main reasons for tonight is to talk openly about who we are as a tennis community in South Carolina and identify barriers to growing tennis in the African American communities. This video highlights some of the systemic issues that are very real within the African American community, as you saw both from the reading assignment and the video. We know that we're undertaking a very courageous effort tonight. We've got 59 people on this call, and having this conversation with one person is hard enough. This is not a conversation we know that comes easily for anyone, but we're asking you to be courageous with us to try to understand what the racial issues are in tennis, if there are any, and if there are, how we can remove those. Alice Marble said it best. We can't just not think about it. We have to face the issues squarely and honestly. I know that the video, a lot that has been happening in the world, probably generates a lot of emotions. You know, my emotions are all over the map. But the only way I can get through the emotions is to try to do something to remove the knee from our collective necks. And I'm being very graphic in my terminology on purpose. In 2004, USTA National made D&I, diversity and inclusion, a key part of the mission and expressed a commitment to equity and leveling the playing opportunity for all, 2004. Yet in 2020, in South Carolina, where we have an African American population of 26–27%, only 4.5% are members of USTA, and only 3.7% actually participate in tennis leagues. It's clear from those numbers that we've got a lot of room for growth, and that's why we're here. So I'd like to ask you to take a moment to reflect on your own tennis experiences. How did you get involved in tennis? When you play tennis and you look around the courts, does everybody on the court look like you? If the answer is yes, why is that? In the privacy of your own home, please, be very introspective about this question. We really want to root out the real challenges. We don't want this to be a fluffy, nice conversation. Speak your mind. Tell us what you think. This question we think is applicable whether you play the game or not. Everyone is here for a reason, as we saw in the poll that we took. And we want your perspective to be heard. So the question on the table, what are the barriers that you see to growing tennis in diverse communities? Are there racial issues that we need to overcome? How
Linda,
do we make a difference?
Linda, I'll start a
For this
conversation.
discussion, let me finish. For this discussion, we're going to use open dialogue first, and we're going to follow that with chat. Trying to do this with open dialogue with 59 people is challenging. So I'm sorry for whomever I cut off a moment ago, but I did it because we need to have an orderly way that we go through this process. Otherwise, we'll step on each other. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little raise hand icon. If you'd like to express your thoughts on the barriers, I'd ask that you click that button and raise your hand, and you will be recognized as the hands are raised. Again, the question on the table is, what are the barriers that you see to growing tennis in African American communities? Recognizing that all African communities are not monolithic, there are differences, but what are the challenges that you think we face? Monique, you've got the floor.
Okay, I'm sorry you can't see me, but can you hear me?
We can hear you, thank you.
Okay, I've been trying to grow tennis on St. Helena Island near Beaufort. It's a Gullah community, Geechee community, and challenges I'm facing a lot. I have, I'm working with public tennis and of Bluffton, who have given me donations. PTI has given me donations, and that's great. But in terms of tennis on the island, for a start, most people here have never played tennis, never had a racket, and there's 2 single courts in separate locations that are far from everywhere that are not kept up. They're not real tennis courts. They're like asphalt. And I have tried to reach out to gated communities that have lots of tennis courts and lots of stuff, and I'm not getting much response at all from. I want to get these gated communities.
It looks like we lost her. So just to summarize, I think her points were twofold: lack of available tennis courts, as well as inability to get access to gated communities. So we'll track that. Gail, you have your hand up. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I think you all know me. My point, you said to go ahead and be controversial. I'll be controversial. When I go to states or something, what I see as the difference is my team from Aiken happens to be all white players, but we play a team from Columbia, and there's like a couple of white teams, and then there's the one black team. So it does seem that people congregate within their groups, and that could be part of the challenge as far as if those teams cannot grow, you know, that's that one team, then maybe we can't grow tennis to like be on part of those other Columbia teams.
That's really a good point, Gail. Thank you. Yeah, I've seen that where you have an all black team, you have many all white teams. I guess building on that, for the group, why is that? Is that a racial reason that the teams are one-dimensional? Do players of different players who are different feel uncomfortable? Has anyone ever tried to intentionally recruit someone different from the norm? Why is that?
Nan Smith has her hand raised.
Please, Nan.
We have Greenview Park in Columbia is in a Black community, and Domino Bowlware is the local pro there that everyone knows and does a fabulous job. It is a community park over there, and it's like a big, every night it's like a family getting together, and it is all Blacks over there. The majority, I would say. But, and, you know, I don't know why, but that's the way it is over there.
Okay. Stan, you've had your hand up. Stan, you're next. You've got to unmute yourself, Stan. There you go. Stan, you're muted. Stan, you're talking, but you are on mute. There you go. Stan, we don't hear you.
Raise my hand. Muted.
Sorry, Stan, you're not coming through. I'm going to shift to Arletha. Stan, something's going on with your microphone. See if you can check your microphone. Arletha.
Good evening, everyone. Linda, that was very good after the about fifth time. So it's Arletha. Thank you so much. I will say I am a active player with the Greenview Tennis Park in Columbia. And, but I also play at the Harbison courts with Betsy. And our team is a variety of individuals of different colors, different backgrounds, and we all get along in that aspect very well. I will say, however, to the point of what draws a particular group of players together is their commonality. And I mean, that's just dated back as far as we can all remember. You know, people who have things in common tend to congregate together. I will like to mention this point, and this has been a couple of years ago, but as far as the insensitivity that African Americans will feel from USTA or from our local tennis leagues, there was a team, I want to think I was a part of this team, but during the match, there were two African Americans playing two Caucasians. And one of the ladies would, throughout the match, make the comment, "shoot the monkey." And to a Caucasian, that may not have meant anything. However, the African American players took offense to that. And I want to say that we have to, whether or not you feel that that terminology was offensive, is not important. It's what the other people, the other person perceived it to be. And I think there needs to be some type of clear, some very clear ground rules as far as what will be tolerated, what will not be tolerated on the courts. And it has to be across the board, because I don't want anyone to think that racism is unilateral, that it's just one color. It can be black on black, black on white. I think the tennis ball my minute is drawing near, so I'll wrap up. But I hope you all understood what I was trying to convey.
I think your points are well noted, and the insensitivity is definitely something that could prevent someone from coming back to a court. So thank you very much for raising that. Ernie, you've had your hand up. Please unmute yourself.
All right, I am unmuted. I think a lot of it has to do with where you play. If you play in Florence, if you want to play league tennis, you're going to have to play on a diverse team because there are not enough black tennis players in Florence to make up a team. So I think that has a lot to do with where you live. Will have a lot to do with who you have on your team. You tend to play with friends, and if your friends only are one color, then chances are you're going to play on a team with one color. I know one of the things I'd like to see USTA consider is just having people who want to play league sign up. Everybody goes into a bucket, and then you pull the players out one at a time, almost like a draft type, and to kind of to force some of that intermixing that we don't have naturally. We do it with a lot of youth sports. I don't see any reason why we couldn't advertise something like that. Maybe certainly for the social leagues, we could use that approach of, hey, you want to play in a social league, sign up, and we'll get you on a team.
Very good idea, Ernie. Very good idea. Fannie Simmons. Fannie, we can't hear you. Hit your mute button. We see you, but we don't hear you, Fannie. We're not hearing you, Fannie. Try turning up the volume on your computer to see if that makes a difference. Stan, you as well. Stan, you want to try again?
*6.
No, Stan, I'm sorry, we're not hearing you. Tracy Pearson.
Hi everyone. I play out of Greenview as well, but I also play out of Lexington Tennis Center, and listen to some of the small talk. I really do understand why we stay at Greenview, because one of the ladies actually said, I guess another lady had started playing out of Greenview, and the other lady told her, say, "What you doing over there? You need to stay from over there." So, I think that has a lot to do with why Greenview has so many blacks and why it's so divided the way it is. Of different comments that we actually hear, we don't confront them, but we do hear comments like that.
And so, Tracy, both you're saying and Arletha said that basically you don't feel welcomed in
Exactly.
certain I don't know if there are any people on the call from any of those areas who might want to speak to it. I know Stan works out in that area, but unfortunately, Stan, you might have to use chat to communicate with us. Let me go to Gail, who has had her hand up.
Unmute. I just wanted to say I started this thing about the teams from Columbia. Being in Aiken, I also play in Augusta, which is a much larger city. And the tendency does seem to be that the public facility teams are well mixed diversity-wise, whereas it's the private clubs that are not. And that could be part of this whole conversation, is opportunities of where people see to make diversity a priority.
So you're saying it's possibly a public versus private issue. And so I want to get us to refocus this conversation. This is all great input, but I also want us to talk about the why, because clearly there are hidden barriers in why we are where we are today. The real question is, how do we break out of that? And this is not necessarily an advocacy for mixed teams. Our question on the table is, what are the barriers to growing tennis in African American communities? And all of what you've said, access to courts. Maybe the private issue is a financial one. No courts nearby, courts in disrepair, not feeling welcomed. Those are all good barriers that prevent more from joining the sport. What else comes to mind? Our sport is a huge ecosystem of people and various entities, country clubs, public facilities, the government, national leagues, juniors, small towns, large towns, urban, rural. Is there anything about just the dynamic within our ecosystem, our policies, our practices that make it difficult for people of color to join the conversation? Nan put in a very astute note, which we know is historically the case, where Blacks view tennis as a white sport. I don't think there's
Also, Monique out of the Beaufort area mentioned that there is a lack of transportation for many of the youth to get to a court to learn tennis.
Yes.
That's a barrier.
Hello, Linda, my name is Paul Stoney. I'm the president of the YMCA of Charleston and also past vice president of Low Country Youth Tennis Association. So, and let me just video myself, so in case I've beaten some of you on the court. But just to add a little levity to this, I just built a number of tennis courts. Some people on this call have been there. April Gift, Bob Pfeiffer. And I think there's a little bit that we can scratch that's beneath the surface. I think our children really do need exposure, as was referenced by the Beaufort young lady. But also, I think our children need to see people and need to learn from people that they recognize, because we all feel very comfortable with people who look like us. And it's nice that Venus and Serena have led the charge for 20 plus years. We all recognize, regardless of color, race, creed, that they're amazing. But there are very few others that in our local communities, and you did the statistic, and I was astounded by the fact that, you know, our population is 26% in South Carolina. However, our tennis involvement is 3-4%. So I think the exposure is extremely important, and just know that our YMCA in Charleston is poised, and I think April and Bob, both who have worked with me, are ready to begin exposing not just Black youth, but all youth, not just Hispanic youth, but all youth to this game. And I also wanted to mention, I got involved because this was an earlier question. I got involved because my father was the first African-American tennis player in New York City on Jamaica High School's team. The way he got that was to learn tennis by sweeping the clay courts in Brooklyn for the Jewish guys, and they taught him without paying him. They taught him, his payment was to learn how to play tennis. So there needs to be a system for us to systematically get children involved. And if you're wondering, what have you done, Paul? Well, I've been teaching tennis in the Low Country in elementary schools with the support and financial support of my Rotary Club, downtown Charleston, for many years. So I think that we need to develop mechanisms to expose children to the game. And so I've said my piece, and thank you for the floor.
Well, thank you, Paul. Very, very, very great comments. Betsy Russell. Please unmute yourself, Betsy. You got to click
Okay, there we go. Okay, hey, I used to be an elementary school librarian in a predominantly African-American school here in Columbia. We had First Tee Golf. They came in and talked to our school district, and all the PE teachers had their equipment. We don't have that with tennis as far as I know. My school is located near Trenum Park, and I guess they figured everybody go play down the road there, and so I mean we had a huge campus, could have had tennis courts, tried to get that going, no interest. But I do think getting back to why the kids don't play, or white folks tend to live in white neighborhoods and black folks tend to live in black neighborhoods. I happen to be living in Harbison, which is a nice mixed community. In fact, there are 5 houses on my cul-de-sac, and I'm the only white on the cul-de-sac, and I love my neighbors. Stan was my teacher for tennis apprentice, and the way we got Arletha and her crew on my team last spring was we played them over at Park Lane, and we knew, these are good folks. We played them at Greenview, and we want to encourage anybody and everybody who wants to come on the team to play. So it's my team is probably about 1/3 African American, but we're doing our part over here at Harbison to try and keep the ball rolling. Thank you, Pamela.
Very good. Thank you. Nicole Floyd, please unmute your phone.
Good evening, everyone. I am from St. George, and our school district is a Title I school district. And what I hear from lots of our families is that tennis is not a sport for African American children, because our mindset is that we only play baseball, softball, basketball, and football, and any other sports out of the box is not accepted into the community. And to get them into it, we introduce it to the after school programs into the school. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. At the moment, I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to go to chat because it's been quite active, and I saw Stan typing away, so I hope we're
Milton
able
Parker.
Pardon?
Milton Parker.
Milton Parker, go ahead and speak, Milton.
Please, Milton.
Thank you. I'm a transplant from New Jersey. And when I was in New Jersey, I was in the school system, and I had a 501 nonprofit. And the only thing I required of the kids was to join the USTA. The rest, I used a school program from the Eastern Tennis Association, and I got equipment. I had people to come down to not only work with the kids, but also with the physical education teachers, which I was a member. And I just find that here, to grow the game, I think you need to start from the little kids, or the kids who are in elementary school. And through that education, or through that schools program, I think they still have one here in South Carolina, I'm not sure. I think you need to start through there, where the kids do not have to pay so much, because you run into a problem with private and public courts. Now, in my area in Richmond too, in the Northeast, there are plenty of schools. So I know there's not a problem about having bodies, but there's a problem about logistics and about instruction, about equipment, courts, and that type of thing. So if you can start from there and then expose the African-American kids and the Latino kids and all the kids into the sport, I think you can grow the game and get the participants. The other problem I found as I came here as a retiree, in my club, I couldn't even hardly get a match. And I think I'm a decent tennis player for O-rated. And I always, have to wait and call, or I have to set my own matches up. Then it got to a point where I found that league tennis interfered with social tennis, because if you played league tennis, that was the only time you really got a chance to play other players in a non-match situation. So, and there's a couple other things. I know my time is up. There's a couple other things I wanted to allude to, in that I think that this is something that's ongoing in terms of increasing the number of African American participants. Thank you.
Very good, Milton. Thank you. Betsy Russell was showing a book. And Betsy, I could not read it. My eyes just aren't that good. So can you unmute yourself and tell us what you're showing us?
I can read it for you, Betsy, if you like. Go ahead.
I got it.
Go ahead,
Thanks.
Betsy.
Yeah, I just typed it into the chat, but it's a book about the first African-American rowing team. If you want to talk about a white sport, rowing. And this team is a high school team in Chicago. There's apparently a movie out now that some NBA players are supporting. But anyway, it's just, you know, gives you ideas. This is a high school team and not an elementary, which I really do agree is where we need to start. But it just gives you, you know, it tells you these kids were given, the guy that started it was a financial guy, and he wanted to give back to the community. He's a white guy, Jewish in fact, and so he was trying to help his community on the west side of Chicago. And you know, it's going to be hard to find that kind of help. You know, so this is a once in a lifetime deal, I'm sure. But, yeah, we do have our parks. We do have people in PE positions in districts. We need to get with them and maybe start young and maybe have some great teams.
Very good, very good. Let me ask a question building on this topic. Are there any issues with how the USTA does things? The day-to-day operational functions around tennis, how we do leagues, how we do awards, how we find volunteers, how we figure out grants. Are we doing all that perfectly? How we figure out players on senior cup teams? Are there any challenges in any of that part of our sport that may be a barrier for people who feel they may have higher skill levels? Couple of hands. Tom Massey.
Yes, Thomas Massey, yes.
Please unmute yourself, Tom.
Okay, I raised my hand before your last comment, so I was going to kind of touch on.
Oh, please.
Just from my experience, both of my kids played high school tennis. They did in middle school. They played for a public school in Richland too, Westwood High School. It's probably 90% African American. I think the last year my son played for them, not a single African American tried out for the team. We cut nobody. We barely had enough to have a team. So I guess what it tells me, it seems like it's really hard to get high school age kids started in tennis. I mean, there was an opportunity through the school. I actually volunteer assistant coached with the team, so I was there with them. For a couple of years, we had some participants, but it just seems like it's difficult to get them to want to play tennis if they haven't, or that they haven't already had that background prior to coming to high school. So I would say probably the best approach is try to get them young. Hopefully they will want to start tennis at a young age and then keep it up, because almost all the high schools in our area have courts, but they just don't have the students that are interested in playing.
Right. Thank you for that, Tom. Before I go back to Milton or Lisa or Ernie, I would like to just go through some of the chats to hear some of the input from others. One of the things that Ernie said was that his parents made him play tennis. And that's actually good, because it says that parental involvement is required because you got to travel to courts and you need some support. Someone made a comment about the county. The county should be available to back up some of what we are trying to do. Someone mentioned transportation. We'd already covered that one. That's been an obstacle for many. Getting to the courts again. Comfort level is important. Someone said, I'd love gated communities. This is Monique, to have beginner, fun-friendly tennis days, maybe once or twice a month, so that people can get together through tennis. And I think she's particular about that because in her area, that may be the only place that kids can actually access tennis. Someone said, agree with Ernie, no more all-star teams. Debbie, a difficult task for white people to recruit people of color to play tennis because we probably don't hang out together outside of tennis. Best to identify people of color in various communities that play tennis and charge them with the task of recruiting people of colors. Absolutely. I think it's going to take all of us, Debbie. Debbie, great point. Does USTA have a program for schools similar to First Tee for golf? Pamela can speak to this. It's not, I don't think there's a name called First Tee, but she has been working extensively with many of the Title I schools across the state to try to introduce this kind of programming that we're talking about. And I'm sure there's more that we can do there, but that is an ongoing effort. Emily, Emily gave someone a clue. If you're having audio issues, you could actually dial in on your phone, use the phone dial in, and that might be a way so that you can participate in the dialogue, Stan. And I think Fanny was having that issue as well. Perceptions, we talked about the perception. Feeling included. This is from Rex. Feeling included and welcomed.
Carol Allen also has a comment. She said, if we could please address the question posed in the chat about whose responsibility it is to recruit a more diverse tennis playing population. Whose responsibility is it? That's heavy.
Well, that's a question that we should put to the group. What do you guys think? Who is responsible for recruiting? It's a great question.
Can you hear me now, Linda?
We can stand. Great.
Perseverance, persistent. I got it. Thank you so very much. I'll shut up now. Go ahead.
No, please, Stan. You have the floor, and we will come back to Carol's question.
I guess, I like to feel like, and this might be kind of crazy, but, and I'm not a sexual guy, but sex sells. And for some strange reason, I try to make tennis sexy, just as they've done with the NBA or any of the other sports. They've advertised it, they put it out there, and they make it fun. Maybe I should use the word, because I believe we do a very good job of making tennis fun for folks. It's just attracting them to tennis. Tennis is not an easy sport. Has a very easy concept, but it is so hard to do. And some folks, including Black folks that I know who are very athletic, they come out and it's like, no, I think it's harder for people to shoot free throws and make them than to do tennis. But they come out and they'll do it one or two times and like, no, that ain't for me, because it's a lot of work.
Good point. Good point. So let's go back to the question posed about who is responsible for recruiting. I see some hands up. I'm not sure if it's for this question, but let me go to Ernie.
All right, I am back. Yeah, I'd actually raised my hand earlier, but I'll be happy to take this question on. I mean, again, it gets down to, because most league teams are recruited by, captains. And unless you get more diverse captains, you probably won't have as many people recruited, because people tend to recruit their friends. And, there's no getting by that. Like I said, unless you went to something like I suggested, which is everybody's name goes in a hat and you pull them out that way. But if you're relying on people to recruit from their friends, and if their friends look like them, chances are that's who they're going to recruit. So the responsibility is to really find those people who are willing to come in and play and be those trailblazers. So hopefully they will open the door for others to come through. But I think, to Stan's point, you can't get them to play league tennis if you don't get them to start at least playing tennis. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of the social leagues to, again, get people exposed to the game, learn basic rules. Because I learned tennis, my parents made me take some lessons for a little while. I did them because they made me, and then I didn't use them anymore. But I picked up enough so that years later, when I was in college, I could start playing intramural tennis just because it was fun. And I think that's one thing. I think we try to rush people into that highly competitive environment too quick.
Okay, thank you for that, Ernie. I have exceeded my time. And so to wrap up this section, I do want to very quickly ensure that we capture some of these notes. Monique talked about deserving good courts. She brings Black coaches and people to clinics, and kids love it. Pre-COVID, she started Net Generation, all of which we think is important to growing the game. Bobby, minority youth focus, challenge with parent awareness of tennis for youth. So focusing again on transportation and the young kids. We talked about the book, the school programs, something about a book that Kobe wrote, pretty cool tennis book for kids. We're not finished with the question of responsibility on tennis that Carol raised. I want to roll that, Pamela, into the next part of this discussion, because I think it is relevant to the issue of what do we do now? Now that we've identified these points, what do we do? And I definitely want to spend some time exploring that question. We need to train more Black and Hispanic entry-level coaches. That's something that we've heard, something that came up during this same conversation that we had with the board, where if we can get more Black coaches, Black teaching pros, that, again, people do tend to navigate to people who look like them. Someone mentioned that whites should not have to recruit minorities. That should be left to minority players. I think that is a questionable point, but one that I do think we ought to explore. Does religion, faith, play a part in the conversation? This is from Stan. I'm reminded that my team had a couple of Hindu gentlemen that didn't participate in the team prayer. The image that was uncomfortable for them. As a result, I don't think they came back because of not feeling included. So how do we make everyone who don't share the same customs feel comfortable? Folks in high school were like that. They brought football and basketball were the sports for them, but the rowing team attracted many more. If you're not already in USTA League, you may not even know it exists. So some promotion via media outlets might be good. Woodland High School has an all-Black girls tennis team. Maybe something to highlight in some of our literature as we move forward. High schools have courts but don't offer tennis and PE, and I think that's something that Pamela's been working to try to introduce, at least at some elementary schools. We're doing okay with diverse volunteers. This is Rex at the state and section levels, and even better at the national level, but we need more at the local level. NJTL after school. I'm just looking for different comments. I think we've hit all the main points. We will capture all of this in our notes as we summarize the feedback. We want this feedback so that we can take it back within the USTA office and figure out how do we use these barriers, this information, to create programs, to figure out ways to grow the sport. So thank you very much for your comments on removing barriers. We're going to shift the focus a little bit and go to, so now that we know what these barriers are, what are we going to do about it? Pamela.
Okay, right before we do that, we got to have a 7th inning stretch. Everybody stand up for just a moment. Stretch your legs. We're going to have a drawing. And this, I'm going to draw 2 names out of my glass vase here. 2 names. 2 people will be a winner of a $25 gift certificate to Tennis Warehouse. First name is Jane Kubik. Is she on tonight?
You have to be on the call to win.
Yes. Is Jane on?
No Jane.
No Jane. Okay. One more name. Kimberly Cotton, are you on tonight?
She was.
She was?
Yes, she was earlier. I can't.
I hear her. Got you, Kim.
Okay, go ahead.
One more. Let me hold this up so you can see that I am being honest as Abe Lincoln. Here we go. David Honeycutt.
I'm on.
Okay, we got you. All right, let's move on into our next segment. Thank you for your patience.
Not sure what's happening there.
Wow, that was interesting. Okay, so we had a little pre-reading to do, and this is going to be highlighting as to where do we go from here. So hopefully everyone had an opportunity to review the article by Leslie Allen. She is an African-American former top 20 player that came along after the great Althea Gibson. It took 25 years for another African-American woman to win a significant tournament. So I think that's a pretty long time. But it's clear from the article that the history of tennis, it has not embraced Black people. We've been dealing with this same issue for a long time, and it highlights the reason that we must be very intentional when we come up with solutions to the barriers that we just talked about with Linda. There's a host of them. Keep in mind that the article makes it very clear too that tennis was developed in the United States with the specific intent to not include African Americans. That suggests that the way we do things today may still be impacted by the historical desire to be segregated. So what can we do? Think collectively about this. What ideas do you have for addressing racial inequities in tennis in South Carolina? What ideas do you have for increasing understanding, increasing trust, and respect across different groups? Is there anything that you can do individually or with others to denounce racism when you come across it and when you see the inequities in tennis? Can you even see yourself being a modern day Alice Marble and standing up for someone, going to bat for someone that doesn't look like you, getting on Twitter, going to a county council meeting or a city council meeting and standing up for someone? Can you see yourself doing that? I'd like to hear from you. So the floor is going to be open once again for 1 minute remarks. We're going to do a few of those, and then we'll do a few from the chat. Linda will have the trusted tennis ball up when you get around the 1 minute mark. Okay, go.
Monique
Pam?
and Arletha have their hands up.
Okay.
Okay, this is Arletha. I'll do my best to be very, very brief, but my hand's been up for a moment and I want it to be obedient to the rules that we set. But just a few things. We talked about, other sports being popular in the African American culture. Well, we can think about baseball, football, basketball. You don't need your individual equipment to play those sports versus tennis. It's a lot easier to have if you have your racket, which there are parents that just cannot afford the rackets, who cannot afford the private lessons. And so we have to also be cognizant of the cost associated with tennis. The other comment I wanted to make was whose responsibility is it to recruit? Well, as far as myself, I talk about the things that I have interest in, and I love tennis. So I find myself when I'm talking with friends or people who I don't even know, tennis pops up into the conversation. So it doesn't have to be, someone that that you invite to the courts. I wear a lot of tennis t-shirts, a lot of tennis gear. It's a great conversation piece. I invite people of all colors, and that just doesn't seem to matter to me. Thirdly, my grandson, for his birthday, he got tennis gear. So that's another idea, another option as far as like grandparents. I pay for the lesson. The kids just have to take them. And then the last, Linda, I'm sorry, I'm trying to squeeze it all in. And then the last comment I wanted to make was, what can we do differently? When you think about basketball, football, those are things that kids play in the neighborhood, in the community, a lot different from tennis. So what can be done differently is introducing tennis at an earlier age. We've alluded to that a good bit in the conversation, but introducing tennis in elementary school, primary school, basketball, kids are often given basketballs for birthday gifts when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. Do the same thing with tennis, and especially in the school systems. There's no league play. There's nothing for kids under middle school to do as far as sports. You aren't able to play any sports until you get to middle school. It's kind of difficult playing tennis in high school. It's just not an easy sport to pick up. Stop there. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Pamela.
Okay.
This is Monique.
Monique, you may go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I want to just give some suggestions to people what they can do, and it's some of what I do that really does make a difference. You can take some rackets, some old rackets, take them to a court in a neighborhood where it might not be your usual neighborhood. Go into a black neighborhood where there is a tennis court. Take rackets, take extra balls, and just start serving. I do like footwork drills. I do things that look like football drills. I do things that look like different sports type drills. And kids and teenage boys and girls will get interested. Can I come? I've had kids just come and approach me and say, "Oh, can I try that?" And so sure, let's go. And so I have gotten a lot of kids playing tennis. I go out there by myself, and often I have people looking at me like, "What is that woman doing by herself?" But I just get out there and I do it, and I will offer. I'll see kids just watching, and I offer them, say, "Do you want to come and play? Do you want to come on the court?" And they'll say, "Oh, I don't know how to play." I say, "Well, I could teach you." And so that's how I get them to play. And I just go up and show up on courts. And that's how I've gotten a lot. I must have I give away rackets to kids. And these children, like I saw, we had a March for Change, Black Lives Matter march in St. Helena. And I did a little workshop, and I saw that these children had quite a lot of skills with the ball, and it was COVID safe, little fun thing we did. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's the kids I gave rackets to last year. So I said, have you guys been playing tennis somewhere? They go up to the court on their own and they are hitting with each other now because I gave them a racket a year ago.
Monique, thank you so much. I'm sorry to cut you off, but those are great tips. Taking rackets to a neighborhood and just being seen with the equipment, being seen doing what you do best.
Yeah.
Next person is, who's next?
Nicole, Ernie, then Fanny.
Okay, Nicole first.
With my experience with having children of different colors coming into our organizations, we found it's best to go into the middle schools, after school programs, where you have parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs and they can't bring the children to any league play. And you introduce them, and then the children are so excited about it. And if they need a ride, there we try to find transportation to and from practice for them.
Ernie?
Yes, I'd just like to talk about the whole question of getting people playing. Yeah, I made the comment about just getting more entry-level coaches. I think that if we can just get kids introduced to the game so that they can go out, just like Nicole said, they just come out and they play. I never took a tennis lesson after the 2 weeks that I took in the summer. I never took another tennis lesson until I was an adult. But I knew the rules and I figured out, I went out and played, we had fun. So I think we put too much emphasis on giving with these teaching pros that you got to have the proper stroke. I've been driving by tennis courts since COVID, and I see lots of people out there just hitting balls around, having fun. Do they have the most perfect stroke? No, but they're having fun. So I think sometimes we just got to let kids play. Unfortunately, today we don't let kids play. Everything's got to be organized. If you get rackets in kids' hands and just let them play, give them some access to the courts, they'll play. The other thing that we're going to do here in Florence, we've got a new city administration, and we plan to make a presentation to them to introduce them. We've got some grant money available. We want to start some programs, but we need the city to emphasize tennis within their recreation department, which they haven't done so far. But we're hoping to get in front of the new mayor and just say, this is a good thing for the city. It's a good thing for the kids.
Fanny was next, Pamela. Fanny, please
Go ahead, Fanny. Thank you. You're next.
Fanny, we can't hear you.
Okay. Let's see who else is next.
Pamela, you've got a bunch of great comments in chat.
Okay. And it says, Jim says, he gives tennis rackets and youth balls each year to Toys for Tots. You never know who will gravitate to the sport.
Great idea.
And then, yeah, and Betsy wants to ask if USTA could collect rackets and share at clinics. It's a great idea. Rex says tennis is inexpensive to play locally, but expensive to become really good. So a lot of practice time, better equipment and travel is needed. And Milton has a comment. We'll get to you in just a second. Monique collects a lot of rackets with the intention of giving them away. And Rex says free USTA memberships, a great new initiative from USTA. We want to make sure that everyone knows this so that we can grow the game. And then we'll have a comment from Milton. Go ahead.
Milton, please unmute yourself. While Milton is doing that, Pamela, you have Jackie's hand raised. Jackie's iPod.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to make a real quick comment. Also, as like a local league coordinator and in our area down here in Hilton Head, And, we talk about people that, you want them to feel welcome on their teams. You want them to feel a part of something. And we reach out to people that are different than us. And I think here, when we see instances or we hear things that happen on a court that could make that person feel uncomfortable, like the comment that was made earlier about some opponents saying particular names or things like that, as local league coordinators and running our leagues, we can't let that go not noticed. We can't let that not be addressed. We can't just pretend like it was a flippant remark or made in jest or anything like that, because I think if we aren't in tune to that's going to lend to some people's not feeling comfortable within our teams and within our tennis community. And I think we have to be able to do that across the board for everybody. So whether it's a female and off comments made, or somebody's called a name, or somebody's background or their ethnicity or the religion's brought up, I think it has to be addressed. It has to be addressed that we will not tolerate that. It'll have a repercussion. It'll be addressed with your captain and your teammates. And I think we have to do that. I haven't, not that it's been brought to my attention, had something quite like that happen yet down here. But I did have a situation where somebody was involved with another person on the court whose language was just so foul, and it turned into some name calling off the court, actually, that we had to address it. That was years ago. So that was just my comment. We have to be prepared to be stern in addressing these issues, even if they make us uncomfortable. Thank you.
Jackie. I will move right into some of the actions that we're taking as an organization to move us forward. I'm not going to recap all of the comments, but we certainly appreciate them and thank you. So the actions we're taking, we've updated our DE&I policy to capture equity considerations. There's a statement against systemic racism that's been posted. There's personal commitments by our USTA leadership. An advocacy group has been formed to target low participation areas. There's been a conversation on barriers in tennis with our USTA board of directors. There's an intentional marketing to diverse communities. There's been ongoing DE&I training with the staff, board of directors, and community leaders. And I've just today gotten news that we have a donation opportunity button that can be used for donating to our NJTLs, which serve underserved communities in our state. That's not exactly what it's for, but that's what its role is in South Carolina. And lastly, we have Tennis Together South Carolina.
So I lost my screen. So we're going to wrap up because we are nearing 8 o'clock. Thank you all very much for participating in this conversation tonight and giving us your feedback. We think this is really an important step to help the USTA South Carolina office put together plans to move the issue of more diversity in tennis forward. And I have to applaud Jennifer and James for supporting this conversation tonight, as well as having the conversation within the board of directors. We can only start to make a difference if we engage together as a community to figure out what we need to do to go forward. So we're going to take the feedback from tonight's session, combine it with the feedback that we already have from the board meeting, working with Jennifer and her team, figure out what actions we can take to make a difference. And so it is our intent to not make this a one-time conversation. We want to do this conversation again. Someone who signed up for this meeting made a comment about being really tired about the word commitment, that we're always committing to things and not ever following through on our commitment. We feel it's a new day, and we've got some new players on board, and we are very serious about addressing this issue head on. We've planned tentatively a follow-up conversation in February. We figure we've got to get through the holidays and the start of the year. So we planned it tentatively for February 10th, 21. And in that conversation, the focus will be on what we are doing or going to do as a result of the conversation. All of us on this call know that some of the things we talked about are short term, other things are long term. They may not happen overnight. And so we're going to put together plans to figure out what we can do to make a difference in African American communities. And by doing that, we know that this will benefit all communities. We've included our contact information on the screen that's now displayed, just in case anyone wants to follow up with any of us on furthering this dialogue. We're very interested and focused on this topic. A few of us are going to remain on the call for an additional 15 minutes or so for further conversation or Q&A. If you haven't had enough of this topic already, we'd love to engage more. Again, thank you so much for your time tonight. We've enjoyed it. It's been very insightful, and we look forward to more in the future.
Linda, before everybody gets off, I have 2 more prizes to give away.
2 more prizes. Sorry, I missed the prize.
1 second. I have D Mac. Is she on the call? Did anybody see D Mac? Arletha, we saw you and heard you. You're a winner of a $25 gift card to Tennis Warehouse.
Congratulations.
Okay, I'm gonna pick one more. I didn't hear from D Mac. Did anyone else see her?
No.
Judy Mattoon, are you on? Or was she on? One more. Jack Mills, he's not on, is he? Anybody see Jack Mills?
No.
I didn't. All right, one more. Bobby Austell, I saw Bobby. Congratulations, Bobby. Thank you. And we'll stay on if anybody wants to talk some more for 15 minutes.
Go off of mute, and we can make it a free-for-all. Paul Pittman, we didn't hear from you tonight.
No, you really didn't. I was enjoying listening, quite frankly. There were some great comments, and I noticed a lot of other people were just sitting back and listening, and that may be just as important as speaking in this type of forum because there's a lot to be learned. I did just put in a written comment, and it was pretty simple. I think with kids, recruiting comes down to pulling all the strings you can, manipulating everything you can to provide access. And once you get to the point where kids have access to tennis, then it takes a fun, welcoming environment, and you got them. With adults, it seems that the programs we're running for beginner adults bring in a lot of diversity. They seem to work effectively that way. Where we seem to fall apart is pushing those people on into other programs. And that may be where we're not welcoming enough. And the access isn't easy enough. My personal philosophy is real simple. When you see somebody, first question should be, do you play tennis? Second question should be, would you like to? And then you don't take no for an answer, and you find a way to make it happen when you get them persuaded to try it. It's that simple. I play with a very ethnically, geographically, almost every other way mixed group of old guys, and that's the way we work. We welcome everybody, and we try to recruit everybody who walks by.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else?
Got a lot of people still on the call.
Yeah,
Hey,
you're on
Linda,
the top.
this is Ernie, and I've got a suggestion. And I don't know if you guys have the capabilities with your Zoom, but I'm part of a large group like that. We have general discussions, and then we go into breakout rooms. That might be something we want to consider for a future meeting. so that some of the people who didn't speak tonight would speak up, and you could gather 4 or 5 people to be facilitators of those smaller groups, just to get more dialogue going, because I think there's an opportunity to get good input from a lot of people, because I don't want people to think that you guys got all the answers. You've got a lot of answers, but you don't have all the answers. So just a way to kind of foster a little bit more interaction would be pretty neat if you could do that. Like I said, we do that in our group. You go off into the breakout room for 5 minutes and then or 10 minutes, and you come back into the big group.
Thank you, Ernie. We did consider that. It was a big bite.
We decided for tonight to be one big happy group.
I could understand, but I'm thinking if this is going to be an ongoing series of discussions, I think we might be able to get even more people speaking up and sharing ideas.
Agreed.
Can I say something?
Please.
I think that this topic, for a lot of people, they don't know how to talk about it, because in America, it's not a topic that they dealt with and they have avoided for so long. So a lot of people are not comfortable talking about race. And so I think that could be part of the reason that quite a few people are quiet. And so, I'm really glad that people are coming, that a lot of people are coming to this conversation, because it's so necessary, it's so important. And like I said, it's long overdue. And thank you guys for doing it. But yeah, I think I think there are people that maybe are just not speaking up because they're not sure if they're going to say the right thing, or they're just a little nervous about talking about race. And because I know so many people that I try to talk to don't want to talk about it. They're uncomfortable talking about it, and they just don't know how to talk about it, which is which it's a shame,
Well, perhaps that's something that we can bring up in the next conversation, how to have that conversation with somebody, and break down that wall.
Yeah.
I know in the group that I'm a part of, it's actually race and religion is what we're talking about. And we have got ground rules, and we say somebody's going to say something stupid. Somebody's going to say something that may offend you, but we got to get those things out on the table to move the conversation forward. If we don't talk about it, we're never going to move it forward.
That's right.
Bobby,
That's right. And
Bobby needs to say something. He's been raising his hand for just a moment. Go ahead, Bobby.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
That's a starter. All right. 2 things. One, would it be possible for a staff person to develop a page of best practices, pulling together what we've heard tonight, but also to leave it open to where this group and others can contribute to best practices, and perhaps divide it into categories? For example, my main focus is youth. Everything else is great, but I want to focus on youth and how to reach minority youth. And so I would welcome those other people back to Ernie's chat room type thing, if there was a way, people that are also interested in youth, attracting more youth, how to do it, etc., under the banner of best practices. Secondly, and lastly, a thought that came to mind is where I play tennis, which is Croc Center, Greenville, South Carolina. I know a lot of people there, and there are a lot of folks that are really good thinkers, but they're thinking about any and everything else, not what I'd like them to think about. And so one thing I put on my do list here is to think through a list of 12, 24 people who, if approached right and told what we're trying to focus on, get, number one, their ideas about how to do it. Number two, their contacts in the minority community. That could be a really great way to get more people energized about focusing on this subject. And if there's ever been a time in my life that there needs to be focused on minorities being involved with the majorities, if those are the right words, now is the time.
Thank you, Bobby.
Excellent suggestion. Excellent.
Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, thank you again for having this conversation. There's a lot to be said. There's a lot more to be said. But however, at this time, I really want to grow the sport of tennis, and especially in youth, and like I say, to some part, some adults as well. But I want to go back to something somebody else said about the equipment and things that are needed for tennis. And I'm saying that I can remember back when I was a kid, I did not learn how to play baseball with a bat and a glove. I used a stick and my hand until I actually got accustomed to this thing and liked it. Then I started playing with the proper equipment. I say to all of my coaching pros that are out there listening to us, can you take a frying pan and play tennis with it? I mean, it's just something simple, and I look at things in kind of a weird way, anyhow. But I'm just wondering, can you take something that's not set or used particularly for tennis and actually teach people, or at least get them interested in playing the real sport of tennis? So if you can take a frying pan, which has the image of a tennis racket, and get people or get somebody interested looking at it, you don't have to have the proper equipment. Eventually, you're going to get it. And that's going to make that kid or that person much better once they get the proper equipment. But turning them on to tennis is the first thing that we have to do. And we don't necessarily need the proper equipment to do it.
Thank you, Stan.
Ladies, if I may, this is Paul Stoney, and I just want to say that we owe you a debt of gratitude for convening this call. And I certainly appreciate all of the dialogue, and I appreciate the fact that you recognize that this is the beginning and not the end. So I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us, if I may, a heartfelt thank you for convening this call.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Hey, Pamela?
Yes.
Hey, it's Jen. How are you? I'm going to raise my hand physically because for some reason I can't find the hand raise button, which is really odd.
I can't either.
I just want to say thank you to you guys. I know the effort that you put into this, both staff and Linda, and just the amount of work that went into it. It's our first one. So I think it's really awesome that we were able to do this. And I, got a couple ideas from it, which, I really do see us doing this February, kind of do it in the different quarters. We've got opportunities now because we've got some ideas like on infrastructure, the visual issues. I think it was, Paul, was it Paul that mentioned people learn from others that they relate to and they see others and it helps them out. I think there's all these things that we can do to kind of pull it together and then start to really solve some of it. The question about who's responsible. If you love the sport, you're responsible. You might not be the biggest salesperson out there, but the fact that you love the sport and you want to play it, you're responsible. And we're going to help you guys become better advocates if need be, or give you tools in certain ways and things like that. But the good thing is we're here as a staff. We're 13 strong, but we need everybody else's help as well with the 18 board members we've got. So I just really thank you guys very much. But we will do this. This is not a one and done. All right. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Can I say something?
Tony has something to say. Tony Odom, if you could allow her. Thank you, Tony. Unmute yourself, please. Tony, you're still muted.
Can you hear me?
Or Jerry.
Okay, this is Jerry, Pamela.
Thank
I
you.
have several things I'd like just to say very quickly. First of all, congratulations to Linda for being appointed to the board. I think
Thank
that's
you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Secondly, Jackie mentioned something about somebody calling somebody a name. It turns out that I'm the chair of the Columbia Grievance Committee, and we dealt with that. We all felt that that was very, very offensive, and so that was dealt with, we hope, in the proper manner. Thirdly, James has appointed me as a chair of an advocacy task force, and I'd like to thank all the members of that task force, Kathy Sill in particular and Cheryl McAllister. But we are working hard to try to develop a model to attract young people, particularly very young people, to tennis. And we hope that model will be sustainable, and we will try to distribute that statewide as we work towards something. Wayne Lilly down in the Low Country has developed something for us that we're going to try in Jasper County, and then we'll try that model in other counties. But we really hope that we can attract very young kids to tennis and show them how much fun it can be. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. On
Can
that
I
note,
say
we
something?
Sure. Yes.
I have this idea. I'm building a tennis court physically myself on my land, but it's not a tennis court. It's a beach tennis court, so it can be dirt. And I just thought beach tennis would be a really good way, kind of piggybacking off the frying pan idea. But anyone, like with COVID, if you could put two sticks and a string, and you just get those little, wooden racket things, and you can be playing tennis in a rural area in your yard with the whole family and getting healthy, but it's giving some tennis skills. And I wanted to do like little YouTube videos and just show people, like, during COVID, you can still play tennis, even if you've never played tennis. Let's do some beach tennis. There's beaches all over here, but I never see anyone playing beach tennis. And beach tennis is a big thing. So I just thought
Balls
that's
do you use for beach tennis? What kind of ball? Regular ball?
No, beach tennis is like an international thing, and there's big money and big tournaments. And beach tennis it's tennis without the ball bouncing, and it's a certain type of, I guess it's more like a racquetball. I mean, like a handball type of thing. But it can't bounce. It's like volleyball in a way, but it's kind of tennis rules. But they have websites, and it's all international beach tennis. So I just thought, if you do beach tennis in rural communities that are coastal, like, that could become a big thing, and it's giving people these skills of tennis. And they can do it at home, and it's COVID safe because they're doing it in their own bubble. So I'm building myself a beach tennis court on my land so I can show people what I'm talking about.
That's pretty cool.
We've played beach volleyball with a low compression ball.
Yeah, beach volleyball or beach tennis?
I mean, beach tennis. Where am I?
Okay.
Yes, beach tennis. I'm sorry.
Okay.
With a low compression,
Yeah,
low
you could do it with
compression
a low
ball.
compression ball. Yeah, a low
Can I
compression
say
ball.
something?
Yes, Rex.
Yeah, I know you think I'm shy tonight, but I'm just like you. I couldn't find the raise my hand button, so I just chatted all night. But we need to get Monique a pop-up net so she can play real tennis on the beach, which she can do. Not beach tennis, but real tennis. So that'd be great. But at any rate, one thing I wanted to say, and thank you, Pamela, and thank you, Linda, and Kara, for putting this on tonight. I think it was great. You did a great job, and it was difficult, I know, with so many people, but I think you handled the call really well. And of course, I've been around a long time, so I've seen a lot of things over the years. And the one thing I just wanted to say is this is going to require a commitment from everybody to continue and stay on top of, because over all these years, I've seen a lot of different efforts to diversity and inclusion, and virtually almost every one of them has maybe had a little steam, but it ran out of steam quickly. And in most cases never went anywhere. So I'm sure with y'all's leadership that this will go somewhere. And I think it's great to get all the volunteers of the USTA South Carolina involved. And I think you can get it done, and it's something we need to do. And I like your attitude of not so much of going back to the history and some of the things that have happened that we're not so proud of, but moving forward to try to make it better.
Thank you, Rex. We don't plan on having stale bread. We're gonna keep the bread fresh around here.
You know, well, I want to know when Stan's next clinic is. I want to come to that one. That's sexy.
Well, and as a matter of fact, today I did a workshop in a school. You know, yes, there's COVID everywhere, but I did a workshop, and Coach Stan came as well because he's the school partner, and we have a Net Generation program that's statewide, and we have a pretty good foothold. It's not, you know, every school, but we all have almost every county represented to have tennis in their PE program at least. So we're working.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up. Anything
All right.
else? If you want to give us a call or email, feel free to do that. I'm open. You have any suggestions or questions, or just want somebody to hear you out? I got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Thanks, everybody, for dialing in tonight.